السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا بالقوم. Right, people, we are back, ya Jama'ah. I'm just gonna wait for this to go live. I'm just sending out a message to my Discord as well that I am live. Till then, you can click like and share. Right. We have got an amazing and of absolutely necessary discussion to ensue tonight on the astonishing and phenomenal landmark events that are taking place in Bilad Sham, in the land of Sham, in Syria. And what better than to speak to a guest that is not only Syrian, but from the children of refugees of Syria, people who've seen this crisis in its heydays unfolding, when it was in full swing, people who've experienced all permutations of the suffering and have lived it out. And to see what they are experiencing, what they have heard, what they have seen, what their relatives are telling us, things we've heard all along, but now are witnessing the realities too. So, people, ya Jama'ah, I have for us today our guest, Osama Zein Abdeen, who I'll bring on shortly, somebody who has dedicated much of his working life to humanitarian cause, is a humanitarian activist and works in the charity sector. He's currently on deployment and we are very grateful that he's given us his time. I can see some of you are asking some questions. Jazakumullah al-khair. Allah bless you all. Yep. Click like and share. So whilst I'm just correcting this, we'll begin. Inna alhamdulillahi wa kafah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa wa ala ibadihi alladhina irtada wa man bihudahum ihtada wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa wa ba'd fa salamullahi alaykum once again. People, with that, I introduce to you tonight's guest on MindTrap, Osama Zein Abdeen.
Assalamu alaikum,
Allah,
Sheikh.
Allah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's a pleasure
Right.
to be here.
Shukran, Osama. Once again, shukran for giving us the time. I know a lot is going on, and you're also currently, I believe, in Jordan, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So, right, Allahu Akbar. Osama, before we jump right into it, I want to, from your words, just a bit of the backstory, the backdrop to your own family, and just to make it to tie it really into what we want to talk about today. So your family's Syrian.
Yes.
Your parents were first-hand refugees due to the political kind of tyranny that was going on. Tell us a bit about this, if you can, please.
So I was born in the UK in the 90s, early 90s, 1993. My parents fled Syria after the Hama massacre that happened in 1982, where Hafez al-Assad destroyed Hama in the space of 3 weeks, killing over 40,000 people, men, women, children of all ages. And he declared a sort of martial law the martial law has been declared since 1971 when he took over, up until the day Syria was liberated on the 8th of December. And my parents, they were in Kuwait, coincidentally, alhamdulillah, they were in Kuwait. Otherwise, my dad would have been executed by Hafez al-Assad, just for simply being affiliated with an uncle of mine who wanted to form a political party to challenge the oppressive regime and to try to bring justice and peace and freedom to the Syrian people. So my father fled from Kuwait, went over to Birmingham in the UK, and alas, I was born in 1993 in the UK as a British citizen, not knowing anything about Syria other than what my father and my mother have told me. And the first time ever that I visited Syria was 2006. And even then, in 2006, that had to be through so many different links and so many different people to ensure our safety, to make sure that we would be okay to leave. And I honestly, it's the British passport that allowed
Yeah.
me to visit Syria safely.
Yeah, because Hama, it was the the massacre and the genocide at Hama it was a turning point in the tyranny of Hafid al-Assad. Martial law was already there, and his kind of his kind of tyrannic ways were already known. But
Yeah.
the way, I believe Hama is, I think, is it the fourth largest city or is it the third? But it's one of the
Hama is considered either I think the second largest city. No,
It's
sorry,
the second
Aleppo,
one. Aleppo, yeah.
Hama, Homs. So Damascus,
Okay.
Aleppo, Hama, Homs, in that order, I
Okay,
believe.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I thought it was either the fourth or maybe the third. So the third largest city, and the way he unleashed his kind of wrath, and I believe it was his brother that was in charge of the military that may have been leading that whole kind of massacre at the time. It left not even a scar, not even much deeper than that in the psyche of the Syrian people. You said you were born in 93. Yeah, 93. So around, what was it? I think it was about 98. I traveled to Damascus. So you're probably just about 5 years old.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I remember speaking to several people because coming from the UK, I was only 18. And I remember finding it strange that why everybody's sucking up to, Hafid al-Assad everywhere. They're glorifying him. Every Anta Shamsuna, you are our sun, you are our Majd, Anta Majduna, Anta this, Anta that. If it wasn't for Assad, then we wouldn't have this, we wouldn't everything. And being born and raised Muslim, I'd been to Pakistan before, and Pakistan obviously is corrupt and it's everything like that. But I hadn't seen this kind of having to suck up to a prime minister or something or president.
It's very common in the Arab world.
Yeah, which is actually definitely much more common in the Arab world. But I hadn't seen it, and then I thought to myself, what the hell? Like, and another thing you noticed back then, which was new to me, was there was always a military presence. Always. I mean, there was nothing going on. This is like 98. It's calm. There's no problem. But there is a military presence like you see army jeeps. You'll see soldiers sometimes just standing around. Yeah. Conscription was there. Like I believe that may have been all the way through. That everybody has to serve time in the military. You'd hear everywhere. This is in 98, everywhere. And then I stayed there for about a year and a half. Then I visited again in, I think it was 2001 for a few months, I think about 3-4 months or about, up between that to half a year. Then I visited again in 2003. Now, there was this is where I learnt the term mukhabarat, the secret agencies. People would say, shh, the mukhabarat, you're not allowed to talk. And they would tell me all these stories, and they would say, such and such he was just saying this, and they came and they took him away. And you think, bloody hell, what is, and then at that, I said to people, obviously I'm only 18 at the time, that, why don't they just, tell them to F off, rise against them. And they told me then about Hama. They told me that, many years ago in the early 80s, people tried, and you don't understand how they butchered them. And so this is now 16 years later. And the people I'm talking to, when they would speak of it, they would still, the fear, the kind of terror was very much alive in their eyes that, what happened in Hama, you don't ever say stuff like this. And so it clearly was a turning point in his kind of tyranny and solidifying and cementing his kind of
course.
Yeah, pharaonic.
He massacred all those people simply for just wanting their rights. And talking about the fear aspect, We'll get
Yeah.
onto that in a second. But just to mention,
Yeah.
the pictures of Hafez al-Assad all over Syria and Bashar al-Assad all
Yeah.
over
All
Syria,
over.
it's important for people to know it wasn't by choice. It's not something
Mm.
out of love. It's only done out of fear. And anything
Yeah.
that is built on fear comes down crumbling very, very quickly, just like we saw in this past week. But just to
Yeah.
mention about the fear as well, when I first went to Syria, I remember we were driving back from Damascus to Daraa, and
Yeah.
we're in a minibus with my uncles, my aunties, my cousins. Even the driver is a family member. So we're with family in a minibus driving back to Damascus. And I remember seeing a statue on the way. So I asked my uncle, whose statue is that? Straight away, his face turned pale, turned around. He said, and I went quiet. I was like, what is going on right now? So when we got to the village, he told me who that person is. And he said, look, don't trust anyone. Don't trust your cousins. Don't trust your uncles. People out of fear will actually
Yeah.
inform on their family members so they
Yeah.
don't get done over, because someone else will say they were in the same sitting and they never informed, so you must be complicit. We had a saying that said, the walls have ears.
Yeah.
الحيطان تسمع. I was sat in my uncle's room watching TV with my family, and then one of my cousins, he climbed the wardrobe and found an old picture of Bashar al-Assad, and he just showed it
Yeah.
to me from the wardrobe. And I'm lying down on the bed like this. So I look up and I just spit. I'm like, everyone left the room. They called my uncle. He came down, took me on a motorbike. We went into the farm. He walked into the farm so no one can hear us. And he started explaining to me. He
Yeah.
said, look, you're from the UK. You can take these risks. Don't put
Yeah.
us in jeopardy. Don't do that stuff again.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting
Yeah.
with my family in their home.
Yeah.
So the fear aspect was like you said, it's not just a scar. It's something that is over generations has been passed on, and
Yeah.
nobody wanted to die or be tortured or go missing. But we'll get into that inshallah. But I feel like it's important,
Yeah.
Mufti,
And
to go into
that's
some
no. You
context.
Of course,
So
and the fear element, you're so right that it strikes, to somebody who's not familiar with all of this. The one of the things that really stood out for me when I was in Damascus, in the first years, 98, so on,
mhm,
is just the amount of decorated photos, posters, statues, all these things, these kind of icons of Hafid al-Assad. And as a foreigner, you don't get it and you don't always know, is it out of love, is it out of fear, until you start talking to people. Because you
yeah,
think, wow, like these people are really up his behind, aren't they? Like I thought that, man, these guys, I don't know who this guy is, but they really have got their heads so far up his behind that then people started telling me that, oh no, this is not, and they said I remember somebody actually telling me, I was in a taxi and I got out the taxi and he said to me that even in the taxi, he said, did you notice he has to hang a picture of Hafiz al-Assad? And I said that, yeah, I said, like, but I'm seeing it everywhere. I go, but I see it in, wherever you go. And he goes that banks and things, okay, you could understand that it's, it's a state thing, representation
yeah,
of the state. He
yeah,
goes, but even a taxi, and he was telling me that's not by choice. That's to show it's kind of your way of saying, hey, I'm not a rebel or I'm not
yeah,
somebody that's against the state. So it's your
yeah,
affirmative action of saying, well, I'm, hey, I'm all good. Like, don't come for me. And to the extent, and I'll add this incident that I don't know if you ever came across this, but they wouldn't use the word Assad for lion. When I was around people, they would use Layth.
yeah,
And otherwise, I mean, obviously, Abu Layth, but I knew Layth meant lion, but I hadn't, when I was learning Arabic, they don't normally in books. I mean, maybe in poetry, إذا رأيت
yeah,
النيوب الليث بارزة, but they don't normally say, جاء Layth, unless it's a
yeah,
person.
yeah.
But in Damascus, I realized back then they would say Layth. And I thought, I said to someone, you guys use Layth. And they were like, shh, because we don't want to say Assad.
Even his
Because they
name,
might,
Al-Assad,
because they might
it,
think, Assad means lion, but people might think you're talking about him.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I just
But
wanted to
even
highlight
his
from,
family name,
okay.
was originally Kalbani.
No way. Is it?
So
Oh, is it
yeah,
Kalbani?
Kalbani was the original
Check
name.
that, from
So when
Kalb to
he,
Asad.
yeah, so it's
He's more deserving of Kalb, of dog, than he is. How dare he jump to Asad
so
from
Sheikh,
Kalb?
for the sake of people who are watching and people who
Yeah,
don't know,
of course.
I think it's important to go into some context of history before we
Of
get into the
course.
past
Yeah, let's do that.
2011 till to the past 14 years. So Hafez al-Assad took over in a military coup in
Yeah.
1971. He comes, we talk about the demographics of Syria. He comes from the Alawi sect, which
Okay.
are such extreme Shias, if
Yeah.
you could call them Shias. Even some Shias don't even consider them Muslim, the way
Yeah.
they worship
So,
Ali and the
yeah.
way they
And just
glorify
to
Ali.
interject there slightly, the Alawi sect, for people, this term Alawi the term Alawi just means an association with Ali, but referring to this, which is actually known as the Nusayriya sect, which is a splinter group from the Ismailiyah, but they were referred to more so, I think, Alawi in the last century as almost like a political kind of move, like a
Yeah,
makeover, so as to make it more friendly. Because Alawi, I suppose all Shia are Alawi in a sense, or people who are affiliated with Ali, as in they take a, so it kind of makes it more people friendly.
more
Otherwise, they
palatable.
were known, yeah, so otherwise it was a more palatable sounding kind of outlook,
Yeah,
because otherwise they were named after Abu Shu'aib Muhammad ibn Nusayr, a person who'd had some really occult kind of batini kind of beliefs. He was a splinter, a kind of offshoot from the Ismailiyah, often declared, this isn't, I'm not, into things like, that we should be declaring people non-Muslims or so on, but he's been declared non-Muslim or takfir by the actual Shia as well. So it's not
yeah,
a Sunni look, that he was
yeah,
that much of an offshoot, and they had strange books, and they are very they were almost like, because they were a minority within a minority within a minority,
hmm,
they were always clouded in secrecy, and
yeah,
there was very little known about the Nusayriya. And I think recently now, with this freedom, they're showing on YouTube, I was watching the other day, certain books that have now been brought into the open, that they're showing certain Nusayriya books of, and I think they have a book which is their second, which they call, actually, I think the Mus'haf, it's not the Quran, but they call it like the Quran of the Nusayriya. And it's just but that was just a brief interjection, but yep, carry on, sorry.
yeah. They basically represent a minority of a population. The Sunni population in Syria was 90% or more, and the Alawi population percentage was less than 5%. And in 1971, when they took over, they became the rulers, the minority ruling the majority. And for some reason, they had this deep hatred towards the Sunni population, and they'd oppressed them to the point where girls in schools are not allowed to wear a headscarf from like when they reach year 9, which is the age a lot of the time in Syria we start putting headscarves on girls. When they reach year 9, they take them out of school now because they're not allowed to wear a headscarf in school. The areas like Ma'an in Syria, where it has like a half population of Alawis, half population of Sunnis, the adhan is not allowed to be read out loud. Congregational salah is not allowed. When you're taken into the army service for 2 years, you're not allowed to pray salah. Your beard, you're not allowed to grow. And there's stories of people who were caught, and I'm not talking about normal soldiers, I'm talking about majors and generals who are Sunni, who were caught praying in the army and they disappeared for years. 4 years, they disappear and they get tortured. Some of them get killed on the spot. So the Syrian people
I
from,
sorry to interject there. Just asking, playing a bit of devil's advocate, I suppose.
yeah,
Just
please.
asking that, look, is it really that people have this kind of hatred of Sunni Muslims? I mean, is this not a bit amplified? Is it not let's say somebody was to say, look, because people who are like Nusayri, they're often not religious. Like they're not that. I don't mean it in a dissive way. I'm trying to diss them. I'm just trying to be descriptive and objective.
Yeah.
They're usually just very secular people. They're just like, they get on with tradition. Other people are Muslim. They just do their thing. Like you have in, let's say, certain parts of the Desi world, you have the Agha Khan, who are Ismailis. They just kind of do their own thing. Do they have a hatred against somebody for being Muslim, Sunni? Or is this one, I'm just playing devil's advocate, that is it more political that they feared that this uprising of Islam was to remove their power, therefore they were trying to crush that as opposed to attacking Islam per se?
There's also a context of their existence in Syria before Assad took over. I believe when they existed in Syria, they were just a group of people that lived in the mountains, the outskirts of the city. They weren't really mingling with the population. They were just on the outskirts. The people that work certain jobs in certain areas. They weren't like the most. They didn't have all this wealth and all the properties, and they lived like in camps, and they were like Bedouins moving around. So when they got into power, they don't want to lose that power now because they knew where they came from. And of course, it's like you said, it's not necessarily just a hatred of Sunni Muslims, but there is that link with the political link with Iran, with the Farsi sort of Iranian expansion project, and it is a question of questioning their power and trying to attack their power and then defending it, of course.
And I had heard as well that, one part of a response as well, just to kind of add to what you're saying as well, is that when the colonizers were there, they needed certain people in their ranks, just as they did in India. They needed the locals to fight because they weren't going to bring the French from France. So it was always easier to enlist a minority who already see some differences. And they did enlist a lot of the Nusayriyin into the French kind of battalions and things. Now, when the French
occupation set it up for him.
Yeah, and when they were to leave, a lot of the military trained people were already the Nusayri. So it kind of, the circumstances of World War One and leading into World War Two and colonialism around the world set the stage for this kind of rise of the, this whole us versus them, but we're also trained and we know how to use arms and
Yeah. So obviously, in the year 2001, I believe 2002, Hafez al-Assad finally died. I remember very, very clearly. I was in Kingsbury Water Park in the UK with my family, just having like a picnic, chilling, and we heard the news, and then we started celebrating, thinking we can finally go to Syria, we can finally visit our family. My father hasn't been till this day, since 1982. And we were just celebrating over the moon, thinking, okay, he's dead, things are going to change. His son is educated in London, he has Western values, he's going to create change in the country. And we had hope. We actually had hope. And he did initially make some small changes, but then I believe he also got sucked into the system that his father built over time, a system that is so hard to break down. When you talk about the mukhabarat and all these people with wealth and power around the country, just stealing from the people and exploiting them, they wouldn't have allowed this change. So unfortunately, nothing changed. And 2011, the Arab Spring started. And if you want to add anything, Sheikh, you can add. But
just before you go on to the Arab Spring, are you suggesting, Osama, that there is that Bashar is that there's a bigger play behind Bashar, or is there a deep state behind him, or is he the deep state as himself, or is he a lesser player? Are you diminishing him of some responsibility here?
Just look at him.
Yeah. I've seen those pictures of him in his Speedos sitting there. This, honestly,
he's not a guy that he's always known in the family as the Tartur. We call him the Tartur, like the little weasel of the family. He has other people that are like
very weasel-like
cousins.
manifestations.
So he has cousins and uncles, part of the family, that are more sort of manly, if you'd like to say,
Mm.
more
Or more
authoritative.
kind of
But
dominant or domineering in the,
yeah,
yeah.
but they chose him because I believe his brother died that was meant to take power. They chose him because his look and his outlook is more in line with what the West would like. Like he's a bit more palatable, he's a bit more
Mm.
less intimidating.
Presentable.
So
Mm.
yeah, but the system existed regardless, whether they chose
Mm.
him or anybody else.
So
The system
he,
existed.
so there is a, but that's an important factor as well to know, that there is a deep state, and he's obviously he's one of the equal elements within that deep state, but it's not just him. There is a, like a dynasty, or this kind
Yeah,
of, there must be generals and all these people. It must be a very military one. That's all
yeah,
kind of, yeah, yeah, yeah. But
yeah.
that's important to know, because not everybody would necessarily, like, they might think he's the sole dictator, and you know,
He's the face. Obviously, he's not
yeah, he's the
innocent.
face.
He's not innocent
No,
at
no,
all.
no, 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 not
No,
far from it.
we're not
Yeah,
diminishing his
yeah,
crimes or the things that he did, but it's important to understand that it wasn't just him. It was the entire state, the entire system,
there's a
and the
deep
system.
state.
It's also important to note included Sunnis. It wasn't just one sect or one ta'ifa. It included Sunnis, like major generals and major people in the army who came from
Yeah,
Sunni families. Let's not call
yeah.
them Sunnis, but they came from Sunni families, and they also were dhalim. They also took
Yeah,
advantage of the
because
system itself.
and this was my point, Osama, that you see, I would assume that like I was saying, the setup that happened, the way the French set it up from a certain sect, but it got to a point where it's not to these people. I don't assume, like, and I could be wrong, but I don't assume to these people it's about sectarianism. It's about power, pure evil, unbridled power. Anybody comes in the way, it's, and naturally, when you are against a people, it's easier to always find us versus them. Like, you want something different, so it's easier to dominate them. So if you
The
say,
same
well, they
applies,
are,
Mufti, to Iran. The same applies
yeah,
to Iran. They use Shiism for political agendas. A lot
yeah,
of Shias, I have one of my best friends growing up, he's from Iraq. His dad
okay,
is Shia and his mom is Sunni. And when
okay,
I
wow,
speak to him, his views and the way he thinks isn't what we assume and what we think about these people. But they get used as pawns, and they use their religion as an agenda to create divisions between people. But we'll get
yeah.
to, I think we should probably talk about the Arab Spring and
Yep,
how
let's
that
get
led
to that.
to
Yeah,
2011. Um, so the
yeah,
Arab Spring, as many people know, was considered like a uprising in the Arab world in different countries. You had Tunisia, where they took
it
out
began in
Ben Ali.
Tunis. Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah,
took
yeah,
out Ben Ali. There was a lot of oppression and a lot of discrimination in Tunisia, and then it extended to like Egypt and Libya and other countries that it's caused a spark. All eyes were on Syria during that time, and everyone commentating and saying was saying it's impossible that the Syrian people would uprise and do something about it. And the reason I want to mention this story and provide the context is because there's a lot of people out there that assume that this is something that the West implanted into Syria. This is something that the West pushed as an agenda to cause the people to revolt against Bashar al-Assad, suggesting that he's
as in right now, or the Arab Spring,
2011. This
the
started
Arab
from
Spring.
2011. Yeah, people
Yeah,
have been
yeah,
saying
yeah,
this from 2011. And it's important for people to understand the context of it because it was organic. It was truly organic. And the story that I know from Dara, because I'm from Dara, where it started, and the people of Dara will all tell you the same story because they witnessed it and we lived through it. So one of the slogans that people spoke about was "الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام." That was echoing in the Arab world. Then
yeah,
yeah, الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام was the main one. So a few
yeah,
children in Dara, and we're talking about 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, some of them even 12. They
yeah,
are hearing this phrase every day on the screens, and they don't understand what
And
It
just for
truly
the
means,
people who don't understand Arabic, that means that the people want to down the system, as in they want to
yeah,
remove the system. شعب
yeah.
يريد إسقاط النظام. They want to
The
drop
people, the
or
people
get
want
rid
the
of this
downfall of the regime. Yeah.
of the regime. Yeah.
So the children, being children, they just went and did some graffiti on a wall. They wrote "الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام." People want the downfall of the regime, and then they wrote under it "جاك الدور يا دكتور." Your turn has come, doctor.
Yeah, that's it.
You
Yeah.
gonna ask something? Sorry.
Yeah, no, because I thought there was a comment something about they said your doctor as well or something about your
Yeah, yeah.
doctor. Yeah,
So
that's the
your turn has come, doctor. Now, children being children, this sparked the entire revolution because these children were rounded up and taken into prison by the Mukhabarat and the mayor of Dara at the time. Remember, you have to understand the geography of Dara. Dara is a lot of tribes, a lot of Bedouins, a lot of like elderly people who are respected in the community, and the government even respects the
yeah.
tribal sort of culture in Dara. So when
Is it
these
like a
children were
tough? It's
arrested,
it like a tough kind of seen as a kind of
yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah,
a kind of tough people because I have a memory that not to derail it, but I have a memory that when I was studying in Damascus in the Ma'had, I was in Ma'had al-Amaniya. I was doing my
hmm
course. This is in that time in Mezze. So two of the people there were from Dar'a. And so one of our, he wasn't, I suppose he was like almost like a teaching assistant. He was like that.
yeah.
So he wasn't the main teachers, but he was like an assistant and he'd be kind of mixed with us more, the students. But I remember him once. He was one of the only people I'd seen with a beard back then. And beard was
Yeah.
probably about your beard size. And otherwise, none of the teachers had beards really. Maybe some had a very small, like that kind. And he had a beard, and I remember once I said something to him, and he said, "Oh, that we're from Dar'a." And in Dar'a, he was kind of like we're like known as yeah, so I was just curious if it had that.
So
Sometimes you have this
there are
spirit, like in.
farmers. We're farmers. So we have a lot of
I see.
agricultural land. Dara, in general, is a very, very rich land in terms of fruits. And people
Okay.
in Syria always say the people of Dara are rich because they're always exporting all their farm
I,
land and
I was
food and
in
everything
my
like that.
mind, in my sense of analogy, being obviously from Pakistan, I was giving it the analogy of like, how in Pakistan you have the Pathans, and there's
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
thing
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah,
them that they're known as
yeah,
like, they're very courageous, they're known as that
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
stuff. And yeah, so I was
I mean,
assuming this
quite
is what he was giving. Yeah,
coincidentally, my wife is Pathan, and our cultures are
awesome.
actually
Very
so
similar.
so like exactly the same.
And for people
Like
who don't
it's
know,
very
we used to
identical.
always introduce Osama as a Pathan back in the days. Everybody used to think whenever they would come to hang out with us, Osama was there. They would think Osama was Pakhtun. Pakhtun
And then
bhai.
I'll speak and then and then I'll speak Arabic, and they're like, "Where did you study?"
Yeah. She's like, wow, this Pathan's really educated. Yeah, he speaks Arabic so fluently. Yeah.
So yeah,
But
so the children, they wrote these phrases on the wall. They got rounded up and arrested. They were taken into prison. So all the tribal leaders from Daraa gathered themselves and they went to the mayor and they said to the mayor that, look, it's been 2 weeks now. The kids have been in prison for 2 weeks. We understand what they did is wrong. They understand what they did is wrong. It's time to release them. And
yeah, yeah.
previously, these things work because the mayor and the president in general respect these tribal leaders and they don't want to cause issues with them because they know we're a bit tapped in Daraa. I'm not going to lie. We get a bit
Yeah.
angry very easily. So the phrase that he said to them, the reply that he gave these tribal leaders is very key to understand. And remember, these people come from a place where we protect our women in a way where other people don't. We look at our women a certain way where other people don't. We're very protective. We're very, we consider them our honor, like in a very high
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
So this guy's reply to this tribal leaders of Daraa, he said to them, we're going to keep the children. If you want more children, send your women to us and we'll make children for you. So they went back
Oh wow.
to their people and they told their people, this is what they said to us. So now the people of Daraa have lost their minds. How dare you speak about our women like that? So they went out in a
Mm,
protest on a Friday after Jum'ah,
okay.
because remember, martial law since 1971, protests
Mm,
are illegal. So there's no way
yeah.
for people to gather other than Jum'ah, the Salah of
Yeah.
Jum'ah. So after Jum'ah, people would gather and come out, and they came out with olive branches saying, release the children, release the children. We don't want the downfall of the regime. We just want islahat. We just want changes. We just want improvements. And they're just saying
Yeah.
to the government, look, don't worry, we're not going to be like the Arab Spring. We just want a bit of some changes, a bit more rights. We want the release of the children.
Mm,
That's it. Then they were met with army tanks, soldiers, snipers, and the first martyr of the Syrian revolution died in Dar al-Balad, in the city of Daraa, the main city. After that, the janazah of this person happened. That janazah turned into a protest. And then every Friday after that, every Friday we had a name for every Jum'ah. Jum'at al-Tahrir, Jum'at al-Nisar, Jum'at al-this, Jum'at al-that. We'd call it. And
is
it was a
this
revolution on Facebook.
localized? Is this localized to Dar'a at the time and just
At the
specifically, or is
time,
it spreading? Yeah.
yeah, this was March 2011. It was
Mm,
localized to Daraa. A few weeks down the line, the children were released. They released the
okay.
children.
Okay.
Yeah. And when they were released, they had their fingernails pulled out. They had broken bones. They had cigarette burns all over their body. The soldiers would smoke cigarettes and just turn them off in their bodies. And that caused a bit more outrage. That caused more anger. And it kept building up and building up. And you had the martyr as well. And then in Damascus, people started saying the same thing as the people of Daraa. We just want changes. We just want improvements. People started coming out and protesting there. And slowly, slowly, this spark that started with some graffiti on a wall that children did not understand how it would impact the entire country. Children on a wall wrote down a phrase where the entire 25 million population of Syria would never even dream of saying. They would
Yeah.
never have dreamed of even thinking about
Yeah.
it. And subhanAllah, from this, it all had a knock-on effect and a snowball effect. People now started demonstrating in Damascus, in Hama, in Homs, saying, protesting, saying, Dara, we are with you. People in Dara saying,
Hmm.
Hama, we are with you. And then you had this unity from every city in Syria. You had this unity of people coming out, protesting and chanting for each other and saying, we will
Yeah.
support you. Now,
Yeah.
this could have ended very easily if Bashar al-Assad was smart, if his government
Yeah.
was smart. They could have just come out and said, look, we
Yeah.
apologize. The mayor should have tortured those kids. I'm going to arrest him and replace him with another mayor.
Yeah.
And that's it. People would have calmed down.
And
People would have
and
said, you know
the,
what? Okay.
and in some ways, there were one or two countries where the Arab Spring almost began, but this is the kind of stuff that happened, that
Mm,
diplomacy. And you saw it in Morocco as well. As
yeah.
soon as they started, the king he sacked and he said, look, listen, he kind of immediately went to diplomacy. And
Mhm.
yeah,
So now you have the entire Syria, and all of this is being broadcasted on Facebook. People are posting
yeah,
videos on Facebook, broadcasting this to the entire world.
yeah,
And we called it a Facebook revolution because without Facebook,
yeah,
people would not be able to connect with each other in other cities and show sort of solidarity with each other. Now, remember how we mentioned that people joined the army for 2 years,
yeah.
mandatory for 2 years. So the army,
Conscription.
conscription. The Syrian army is built around the Syrian people. The army themselves, the soldiers and the people in the Syrian army are from the people themselves. And
Mm,
this meant that a lot of people were refusing to shoot other protesters. A lot of people were refusing to kill their own cousins
yeah,
and their own family. And these people would get
yeah,
killed, these soldiers. So what started happening is people started defecting from the army. And then the
mm,
Free Syrian Army was formed. When the Free Syrian Army was formed, people from across the country, remember, we're disconnected from each other, we're across the country, different cities, people slowly started defecting and saying, I'm joining the revolution, I'm joining the revolution. Then when this happened, that's when the Western intervention began. That's when the West looked at Syria, saw a division, and took an
Yeah.
opportunity to fund one side. But they funded the FSA in a way where they would not overthrow Assad. They funded them in a way
Mm.
where it's very minimal, in a way where
Okay.
they ensured that the conflict continued. Because on the other side, you had Russia and China supporting Assad, and Iran as well supporting Assad. And then on
Yeah.
this side, you had the West funding the FSA in a very small way, just to keep them going. They could have easily funded them in a way where they overthrow Assad, just like they did in other countries. But they
Mm.
didn't want Assad to go. They just wanted conflict. They wanted a boogeyman. They wanted people to see the world to see that these people in the Middle East are barbaric. They're always fighting. They're always having wars. They're always doing these things, and just continue this false image that the world has
But
built around
just as
Syrians.
to throw in as a little, devil's advocate thing there, that you see, the Assad regime has always been right from the onset. They've been very allies with Russia, so Russian allies. Therefore, by default, seen as staged against the West or positioned against the
Yeah.
West. So why
Yeah.
wouldn't they want them to go? You said they didn't want them to go. Why wouldn't they? Was it that they felt this will just turn into another Iraq, or why not? Like, why not replace them with a
Because
proxy, one of their own proxies?
because Assad has generally just the Syrian regime and the Assad family in general are snakes. They're hypocrites and they're snakes. So they have agreements with Israel protecting their borders. They had agreements
Mm,
with Israel for years, and these documents are coming out in this today. Now, we've always been saying this to people, and people didn't
yeah.
believe us, that Assad is protecting Israel's borders and he's serving Israel's interests. Now, being tied with Russia and China and all these other countries, the West and all these other countries, people will see them as black and white, that this is evil, which means this must be good, or this side is evil, which means this
Mm,
must be good.
mm.
But both sides can be bad. That's also a possibility.
No,
Just because
complex,
as Syrians, yeah, just because as Syrians we say that we are anti-Iran, we are anti-Russia, we are anti all these countries that have been contributing to the slaughter of Syrians, that doesn't make us pro-West or pro-America or
Mm,
pro-Israel. There's a middle
mm,
ground that people need to see, that we are trying to show the people that just the West and the East, they used Syria as a playground, as a proxy war to
mm.
fight each other because they don't want to fight each other directly. So they fight each
Yeah,
other in these proxies with different countries, destroying other countries and keeping their countries safe.
of
So
course. Yeah,
to answer your question, Assad was protecting Israel.
yeah. This the Arab Spring, that just with on that note, you see, as the Arab Spring went, or Syria was perhaps one of its most chaotic, and if I can use its worst instantiations and manifestations, because it, unlike, let's say, Egypt, which also, one could say, well, what came out of the Arab Spring in Egypt, because there was, in terms of result, or
Yeah.
in Libya, but in Syria, it was just endless years of infighting, chaos, bloodshed. Yeah, what are your thoughts on all of that?
I mean,
And let me add to that before you
yeah.
just respond, is that you see, years a few years back, I commented on one of my shows. I think it was Meaning with Malm, when I used to do the Meaning with Malm.
Hmm.
And I can't remember, there was always things going on in Syria. Always, there's always been chaos for the last decade or so. Most of from 2012, 2011, right up until, let's say, 2022, 2023. Even, it's just, unfortunately, there's been a lot of chaos. And maybe in the last year, we haven't been hearing as much, but as a Syrian, you probably have.
Yeah.
Now, the I remember saying on one of my shows that something had happened, and I said that, when I was kind of reminiscing, and I said, when I was young, and I was naive, and I was 18 years old, I was in Damascus, and I would see Hafid al-Assad everywhere, and I would see these people sucking up to him, and they're so frightened of him. And I remember saying that, look, why don't they just rise against him and just fight him? So what? Take up arms and rebel and do this. And I remember saying that. On obviously, people would crap themselves if I say something like that. But I was young, I was a foreigner, whatever. But I always held that sentiment in my heart, and being a young kind of DC, I was like, "What the hell? These people, why are they? They should just, own
Especially from
guns and do
Pakistan,
this
where you
and do
guys
that." Yeah,
overthrowing someone every week.
it's like in Pakistan, not a single term of the prime minister has ever lasted. It's all been always not a single one since Pakistan began. They've lost. So when this was happening and I was doing my show, and there'd been so much, almost a decade of chaos, bloodshed, uh, just suffering, suffering. And I do feel that I have always had a soulful connection with Damascus and Syria, just because of where my journey began in my studies. It began on the road to Damascus, and what I studied there. My Arabic came from there mainly. My essential Islamic stuff. Me returning to it time after time. My ijazah in the Quran. A lot of my initial that journey is rooted. And when just seeing all of this, I remember saying on a show that, I was wrong. That, my kind of this youthful folly of being very light with bloodshed, saying,
Yeah.
oh, just fight them. And now seeing a decade of spilt blood. And I remember saying that, Imam Malik was asked about Bani al-Abbas, who'd taken over, in his time. They'd taken over from the Umayyads, and people wanted an uprising against them. And he said, look, he kind of said, don't. He said that, look, da'hum Allah, yantaqib Allahu min zalim bi zalim. Allah will take an oppressor to replace the oppressor. Just don't that, like we've seen too much bloodshed. And in his time, there had been an attempt. Muhammad Nafzakiya had tried to rise and they crushed him in Medina. There'd been many before. Now, I remember saying that I was wrong, I was mistaken, that whatever it was, that it was better than the chaos, than the fitna. Al-fitnatu ashaddu min al-qatl. This thing. So coming from that sentiment, I do, it's crazy because life is nothing but an unfolding, a series of unfolding realities. And I'm so enjoy that they've succeeded. But then, somebody could play my clip for find it 2 years ago. I'm thinking, oh my God, I was so mistaken as a teenager to think you should rise. Look at all this bloodshed and suffering. So, yeah, because the Arab Spring in Syria was just completely unpredictable. Like it took its own path of chaos for a decade. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that as a Syrian with family
I
there, and
mean,
maybe
it's
family have suffered?
important. It's important to note that it did start as a peaceful thing, and people only
Yeah,
took up arms to defend themselves. It started as a
yeah,
peaceful movement. People took up arms to defend themselves, and as things progressed, Assad himself, he kept saying to the world that I'm fighting terrorism. He's using Western language.
hmm,
He's saying to the world that I'm fighting terrorism in my country. And Assad used the label of terrorism just like the West used the label of terrorism. They politicize it in a way to just serve
hmm,
their own agendas. So anybody who's
yeah,
against him is a terrorist.
yeah,
That didn't work for a while. That didn't work at all for a while. So what he ended up doing was releasing a lot of political prisoners and releasing a lot of people that were dangerous for the society of Syria. And from them, ISIS was formed. From them, ISIS came, and it was crazy because as Syrians, our experience with ISIS was mind blowing, Mufti. It was mind blowing. We'd
yeah,
be, for example, Homs or Ghouta. Let's talk about Ghouta. Ghouta
yeah,
was surrounded by the regime and they was besieged by the regime to a point where people had no food and no water for months on end. People were eating rotten, crispy bread. People were eating leaves of trees. Cats and dogs. People broke into zoos to eat meat. killing animals and trying to survive. Then they hear that, oh, there's this group coming from the other side of Syria, and there's a group coming from Iraq, and they're called the Islamic State, and they're going to liberate you. And then
Yeah.
this group turns up, and the Assad regime withdraws. The forces of the Assad regime withdraw without a fight.
Okay.
This group comes and they steal all the resources of the city, and then they leave. They don't protect the people, they don't do anything. In other cities where ISIS took over, the
Yeah.
bombardments from the Assad regime stop. There'll be airstrikes on the people. As soon as ISIS take over, he stops
Yeah.
bombing the people and he's allowing them to rule. And now he can say to the West, look, I told you I'm fighting terrorists. I told you. And that made the West back off, which prolonged the revolution in a way
Because
where he could
Raqqa
oppress
was
these
a
people.
stronghold.
Yeah,
Isn't? Yeah.
yeah,
Raqqa was.
yeah. I mean, Assad destroyed the entire country, bombing it left, right, and center. Why couldn't he destroy Raqqa and destroy ISIS in Raqqa? But he didn't want to, because it was his group, it was his people. Even now, when we're going to Russian bases in Syria, they're opening boxes and they're finding uniforms of ISIS. They're finding uniforms with all the patches and everything, which proves that these people were fake. My family, my cousins, they fought ISIS, physically fought ISIS, defending their country, defending their people. And then when they kill these soldiers, they look at their arms and they have a tattoo of Bashar al-Assad. But the way the West viewed this group, they aligned them with Muslims for some reason. But these guys did not represent Islam whatsoever. They were a group of terrorists that terrorized the people, and the biggest victims of this group were Muslims, mainly in Syria and Iraq, in Mosul in Iraq, where they killed so many people. And the same thing happened in Iraq, by the way, Mufti. I don't know if you know this, but in Mosul, sorry, going on a tangent, when they invaded Mosul, it was around 500 Islamic State soldiers, 500 of them. They had like 12 jeeps, 12 cars. It was a very, very small group. They went into Mosul. Mosul has around 8,000 soldiers, around 6,000 police officers, and they all have weapons. They received an order to leave their weapons and evacuate. And they handed it over. They handed Mosul over to ISIS. As soon as ISIS took over, the Americans, the Iraqis, the Kurds, all of them united to bomb Mosul 100 years back. And I visited Mosul after it was liberated from ISIS. Not a stone was left unturned in Mosul, Mufti. We were walking through Mosul and we could still smell the dead bodies. There's wells full of dead bodies. There's houses full of dead bodies. And they destroyed the entire city that they handed over to this group that they could have fighted, but they chose not to. And the same happened in Syria with all these cities.
Yeah.
So it's important for people to sorry.
No,
I was going to go
of
to some
course.
statistics.
Okay, you go for it. Yeah, and then
Syria's
what?
population.
And then I'd like us to come to this. I mean, two key things. Somebody just asked a question here about Israel. We'll come to that after. I want to first of all this sudden uprising. I want to come to that after the statistics of people are, there seems to be a sudden meteoric rise of the rebels, which is so successful in 9 days. They've done all of this. And, the question marks that people have thrown at that. And then now the tyrannic onslaught of bombardment that bloody Israel is doing. And, and mind you, the world is not a single bloody media outlet is bothering to report on it or even bat an eyelid.
Very minimal.
Yeah, well, I mean, and if they do, it's language that is like, they've used language like they are creating neutral, they use this kind of very sanitized language, which sounds like as if they're bloody mopping up and cleaning for you. They use this language like, they're just neutralizing any kind of certain harmful threats and removing them. And it's like, I don't want to swear, but these people, they're bombing, they've dropped hundreds of missiles on Syria, and the world
Yeah.
watches. But also, what is people are asking, well, one, this meteoric rise, two, this radio silence towards, the tyranny of Israel. So, yeah, but
I'd love to get into that, and I want to get into
yeah,
that, because it is something that people need to understand and know. But
yeah.
before
And
that,
so,
the
yep. So
statistics
that,
of
and then we'll come to that, Awan, as well. This kind of tyrannic plan of Israel, demonic
Greater
plan to
Israel. Yeah.
have greater Israel.
So 25 million people in Syria from 2011, when the revolution started.
Yeah,
15 million, are we talking about a population of 25 million? 15
yeah,
million were displaced internally and externally into Turkey, into Jordan, into Lebanon, into other countries. 4 million refugees went into Idlib. 4 million. Yeah, that's like a
wow,
fifth of the population. 4 million
wow.
refugees went into Idlib. Now, Idlib became a sort of stronghold for the people escaping, for the rebels, for the revolutionaries. And Turkey did provide support to sort of keep them there so they don't come into Turkey. Turkey don't want more refugees. So they provided some
Mm,
support. They created some sort of buffer zone. It wasn't a complete
mm.
buffer zone. It's some sort of small part of land that they created a buffer zone. Idlib was still part of, Syria. Idlib was still getting bombed. Every other day, Idlib was getting bombed.
Why
So
couldn't
this,
they raise it to the ground by just non-stop carpet bombing? If that's what I'm just saying, I'm curious.
Allahu Alam, Allahu Alam, I don't
Okay,
know.
okay,
But they were bombing. I mean, they were bombing
yeah,
random people. They were trying to make sure that they don't rise as a power. So people would be picking
mm,
olives in their lands in Idlib, and then
mm.
Syrian regime would bomb them.
Perhaps
People would
also
be
they don't want the world to see them in that despotic light. Like maybe if they do
maybe,
non-stop carpet
maybe,
bombing, it might catch world attention. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I just want to address this because you said sudden, and
Mm,
people don't need to understand this wasn't sudden. This has
okay.
been ongoing for over a decade now. And from 2016, when it became sort of a new governance and you had this new person come in and take over and rule it, they started planning something like this. They started training soldiers. They reorganized all these different factions that
Because
were against the
because
government and united them.
one of the question marks in this is some people saying, well, is this a distraction from Gaza? And
Mm,
so because the sudden meteoric, but sorry, carry on. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We'll get into that, inshallah. It's coming.
yeah, yeah,
So for months on end, almost a year, they've been planning this sort of takeover. And part of the plans was just Aleppo, I think. They didn't want to
okay,
do the whole of Syria. They wanted to just expand slowly into Aleppo. Now, with the Gaza
mm,
conflict right now, with the Gaza
yeah,
conflict, speaking as Syrians, you have to
yeah,
assess the situation around you based on what's going on around the world. And when your enemies from Iran, the militias in Iran, your enemies from Hizb al-Shaytan, aka Hezbollah, when they're busy and they're weakened, then
yeah,
why wouldn't the Syrian people take advantage? Why
mm,
wouldn't they? When they've been oppressed, when they've been displaced, when
yeah,
2 million Syrians have been killed. The official numbers are 600,000. But as Syrians, we know it's almost 2 million. There's
yeah.
over 100,000 people missing, and they've dissolved, they've disappeared. There's no records. There's not even found in prisons. Their bodies are nowhere to be seen. People don't know if they're dead. People don't know if
By
they've been
who?
sent to Moscow by the
By the
regime.
regime?
By the,
Regime,
by
yeah.
the
Not
regime,
by
yeah.
Hezbollah.
No, no, no. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
by Hezbollah also. By Hezbollah also.
Okay.
So these prisoners could be in Lebanon. They could be in Iran. They could be in Moscow. Or they could have just been completely destroyed and evaporated, like they dissolved them in acid or something like that.
Mm,
There's over 100,000 people missing, and people are trying to find their bodies and trying to find where they are. One of my uncles, my dad's brother, he was taken in 2014 on his way to work to Damascus. He was just on his way to work, stopped at a checkpoint. He was taken. Why? We don't know. Where is he? We don't know. What prison? We don't know. Was he killed? We don't know. Is he alive? We don't know. And this is part of the psychological torture that this regime was inflicting on people. This didn't start just in 2011. People would go missing since 1971. There's a Palestinian man from Al-Quds, from Jerusalem, who just came out recently. He was in prison in Syria for over 40 years. 40 years. And there's a video of him on social media now where he's looking at a mobile phone and he's thinking, this is the first time I see a mobile phone. Can you imagine
Yeah.
40 years stuck in somewhere, not have access to technology? You don't have access to anything else. You don't know what's going on in the world. People are coming out of prison saying that, oh, did Saddam Hussein free us? Did Saddam Hussein come out and cause this revolution? Was it Jamal Abdel Nasser?
You know
People
what's
don't
interesting is
can't
Gamal
fathom it.
Abdel Nasser, when there's he's on record when, because many people don't know, for a brief while they united and created the United Arab Republic. It only lasted about 2 years, I think, in the 50s.
Yeah.
But he said to one of the Syrian representatives when he went over there, Gamal Abdel Nasser said about the Syrian Ba'athist torture methods. He said that you guys are something else when it comes to torturing. That you just take it, like he was kind of mocking them, but saying it at the same time that
Yeah.
you guys torture your own in just sadistic ways. He said, "What is it with you and you Baathists and Baathists and this torturing?" But yeah,
Yeah.
but that's somebody who himself is seen as a tyrant saying it, so it's kind of like, whoa, yeah,
And this is important to mention because you mentioned Imam Malik alayhi rahmatullah when he mentioned that
yeah,
Allah yuhliku al-zalimin bil-zalimin, that Allah
yeah,
will end oppressors with oppressors. And people need to understand that just because Hezbollah and Iran are supposedly on the outlook, look like they're fighting Israel and they're trying to save the Palestinians, they don't care about the Palestinians. People need to understand this. Iran and Hezbollah don't care about the Palestinians. People will say, why? Why would you say that? Okay. Yarmouk camp in Syria is second. Oh, there's a thumbs up. Is the second
the algorithm is supporting you.
Yarmouk camp. People migrated there from 1948 and 1967 from Palestine, escaping the occupation, the illegal occupation of their land, escaping all the killing and all the rape that was going on in Palestine at the time. And they formed this camp called Yarmouk. This camp has been built up into a city now. And when the Syrian uprising happened, the second and third generation people living in this camp, Palestinians living in this camp, they stood with the Syrian people. What was Assad's response? What was Iran's response? And what was Hezbollah's response? Because whenever we talk about the Assad regime, we're also talking about Iran, we're also talking about Hezbollah, and we're also talking about Russia. They
Yeah,
besieged this town, they besieged this city. Thousands of people in this city, these Palestinians,
yeah,
they were starved to death. Thousands of people were killed. Thousands of women were raped. There's a famous video that came out in The Guardian, and it resurfaced a few years ago, where the Syrian soldiers have people blindfolded, and they say to them, "You're free to go. Keep walking, and you're free to go. We're releasing you." And these people that are blindfolded start walking, and they don't realize that there's a hole in the ground in front of them, and they fall into that hole. As they're falling into that hole, the soldier standing on top will shoot a bullet, not killing him, just shoot a bullet and let him bleed to death in there. And this hole is full of bodies, full of bodies. One by one, they were taking people, and these people that they were killing were Palestinians. Palestinians. Let's talk about Ghouta. Ladqiyya. Ladqiyya is on the coast, and it's full
coast.
of these sects. Now, the Alawi sect. Now, when Ladqiyya was surrounded and it was besieged by the Syrian government and Iran and Hezbollah, they had Hezbollah militias guarding the borders of Ladqiyya. I met a Syrian man yesterday that told me about his experiences, and he spoke about how when they left Ghouta, when they left Ladqiyya, His cousins left with their wives and their children. And
Okay.
I know it's late right now, but I need to give a very graphic warning about what I'm about to say. These Hezbollah soldiers saw these families leaving Latakia, trying to go to their safety. They grabbed the women, grabbed the husbands, and they raped the women with their husbands watching. This guy's cousin, he died out of shock, not out of being killed. He's watching his wife being beaten and raped, and he can't do anything. He fell to the ground and died on the spot. The little girls that were with them as well, young girls, 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, they were also raped by these Hezbollah soldiers. There's pregnant women that came out, and it only gets worse. There's pregnant women that came out. What they would do, they would get a knife, and they called it a rusiya, this knife, and they'd stab the woman in the stomach, killing the baby, and allowing them to bleed to death. They went into cities, Iranians and Hezbollah and Assad soldiers, they go into cities and they were told not to use guns, only use knives. And they'll go to people, they'll walk into a house, they'll slaughter people and allow them to bleed to death, men, women, and children. Iranian and Hezbollah soldiers, they were on the front line. They're the ones who did all these crimes. And the Assad regime would come in after they've taken over a city and they'd loot the entire city. They'd break property, they'll take people's money. They'd walk into a city, they'd put tires, rubber tires, around all the children, and they'll set these tires on fire. They set people's houses on fire. The amount of crimes that these people did is beyond imagination. It's something you don't even see in movies. It's something when we used to tell people about this, they'd say, "Nah,
Is this
no way, you're
during
lying."
the military kind of coup thing and the or the
This is
82?
from
What is this?
this is from 2011 till 2024. This
This
period.
is very recent in the Arab
Yeah,
Spring.
yeah, this period.
You know,
This period.
can I see? I, I- hmm. Is it not possible that when it comes to that, let's say the Palestinians and Israel, you know, doing the genocide, just torturing and killing non-stop in Palestine and Gaza, is it not possible that for that Iran and even Hezbollah that they can be sincere and genuine in uh, in siding with the Palestinians there? Because like what I'm trying to say is that like can it not be that in some things that people can still be genuine, some things they can be equally maybe
Look, there's there's
evil
there's no
themselves as
doubt.
well? Can't it be complex
There's
as
there's
opposed to
there's
just
no
being
doubt that
pure?
no,
Yeah,
no, there's no doubt that a lot of Iranian soldiers and a lot of Hezbollah soldiers, and by the way, these soldiers get recruited at a young age and they get brainwashed at a young age. A lot of them
yeah,
do have this love for Palestine. A lot of them do have
yeah.
this
And
sort
sometimes
of
it's also
drive to
the
free
fact
Palestine.
that, and it's also the fact that the enemy is so clear, this tyrant of an Israel state, that they see it as more black and white.
Mm.
And whereas when it's amongst Muslims, they're probably seeing Syrians as, oh,
But
and then somebody saying, well, they hate
why do
us
we
and we hate us.
see what are the reasons that we see Israel the way we see it? It's occupation of a
Yeah,
people.
it's occupation. No,
It's
it's true.
the
It's
killing.
true.
It's the
If
killing. It's the killing of a people. It's zulm. It's oppression. Let's just
Yeah, yeah.
summarize it and
It's
call it
not because
oppression.
they're Jewish. It's nothing to do with
Oh no,
them
no,
being
no, no,
Jewish.
no.
Of course not.
It's
Of course
oppression.
not.
It's oppression.
Yeah,
And
it's a
when we
dhulm.
see
Yeah.
oppression, when we see zulm and see oppression, and we want to fight this oppression, does it make logical sense to fight oppression with oppression? Does it make sense to fight oppression and say that the people who are going to liberate these Palestinians from oppression are these same people, Iran and Hezbollah, who committed all these atrocities in Syria? Is it
Yeah.
possible? Like, does it make sense? Why do the Syrians have to sit in silence and say, you know
Yeah.
what, we won't do anything? Let Iran and Hezbollah rape our women, let them kill our children. And the
No, no, no.
hypocrites in the West who want to fight oppression, they don't mind Iran and Hezbollah doing this to Syrians, But you know what? As long as they're fighting Israel, you can go rape Syrian women. It's okay. But as long as we're fighting Israel, it's okay. It's fine. Syrians, shh.
No, I
It's for the
mean, no.
greater good.
These
Shh.
things are never. These things are
That's how they
never
sound.
okay. It's just I feel that you see there is a complexity that because in the face of okay now Israel now in the world standing still acts with impunity, but it's lost a lot of face in
Mm.
this last year because the world has kind of seen the genocide, seen the tyranny, seen the impunity. Before a year ago, before October the 7th, they refused to even see it. They refused to even acknowledge it. Now, however, when this was happening, the genocide in Gaza, and they're just doing it with impunity, no Muslim country, no Muslims could really, would even dare speak or say anything or challenge. Now, in all, being credit where credit is due, Hezbollah and Iran did stand up. And they did, whatever they did, but they showed some might. And I'm sure that people are multifaceted and they've got their own reasons as well. But let's just hope with some husna dhan there was that insaniya and the fact that no Muslim is daring to stand up to this. The irony is to this Goliath, which they claim to be the offspring of David. So that they have become this Goliath, and no, there is no David in sight. And then in that confusion, at least Iran did something, and so thereby it did
What
in
what
that
did
act
what
win
did
the
what
hearts
what did
of Muslims.
what did Iran do?
It kind of did it flexed its military kind of muscles by shooting hundreds of drones and at least debilitating its Iron Dome and showing that we can if we want. Like some
How many Israeli soldiers did they kill? How
no, they
many
didn't. No, they didn't kill
Palestinians did they
really.
free?
Yeah, no,
Iran,
they didn't do
for
that.
our
Yes, that's true.
as Arabs and as Syrians, we've known this all our lives. Iran do the same thing every time. They just,
Yeah,
warn and condemn. Hezbollah do the same thing every time.
yeah.
They
But I
only
meant it
fight
was better
Israel
than
into their
not
land.
doing it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. But
Yeah,
let's
like
not
because
let's
nobody
not
else.
be
Because
fools
you had
into thinking,
Erdogan saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this," nothing. Like nothing, and everybody's watching on, and people are thinking, well, at least if some, like I do feel that with the presence of Iran, what it did, and I don't. This is not to justify the rest of whatever they've been doing,
yeah,
but
yeah,
with their presence, the way they did that, it may have actually prevented, ironically, even like a world war, the war kind of going completely out because there was fear of some, there was a deterrence in thinking, like, we have to be careful because the Israeli retaliation was so mitigated. It was like such a weak retaliation because they knew that, if we don't want this to go higher. So, yeah. But
look,
okay. Yeah, I
so
agree. And
so
I was just saying, yeah, that about it being, it could be that it's nuanced. But this thing coming here about Jolani, about this sudden
So just
uprising,
just
people are
just just
saying,
just
yeah,
on that point, it's important to also to understand the psyche of an entire world that has been
yeah,
watching these disgusting crimes from Israel for all this time. The entire
yeah,
world has been watching and waiting for somebody to say something, waiting for somebody to save all these people being oppressed. And as
mm.
soon as they found the first person that said something, or the first country, people were going to stand behind them. And Iran
Exactly,
and Hezbollah took
exactly,
advantage of this.
Ex-
They want to take advantage of
exactly.
it.
Like
They
I
need
can't
people need a
lie.
savior.
Just like anybody, you need, like even like they say, a drowning person will clench to a straw. This at
Yeah,
least was a show of might, and
yeah,
it was a show of might when Muslims were seen as utterly weak, and
yeah,
so. Putting aside in that moment Sunni Shia differences and stuff like this, that they are Muslim and the fact that they stood and said something, you're right, they didn't liberate Palestine, but
they
they
didn't do
did
anything.
something. So they in that won the hearts and minds
Yeah,
of Muslims
yeah,
because nobody did anything, nobody else did anything. And in fact, Muslim countries, if anything, just massaged Israel, King of Saudis
yeah.
doing,
Look,
oh, we're
but
not
what's
worthy, we're not,
happening?
yeah.
What's happening in Palestine and as Syrians from a very young age, we grow up with Palestine in our hearts. These
Of
things are
course,
not,
yeah.
they're not symbols for us. These things are part of our culture. These things are
Mm.
part of our lives, part of our upbringing. The Syrian
Of
people
course, of
and the
course. Yeah.
Palestinian people have this connection that nobody else has. We fought with them during the
Yeah, of
occupation in
course.
1948 and 1967. And when I say we, I mean the Syrian people. I don't mean
Yeah.
the regime or anything like
And
that.
what people forget as well, that that was all historically, it was all sham. Like,
Yes, yes,
now
yes.
with nation states, we say Jordan, we say Syria, we say Palestine. In the past, people referred to it as sham. And Quds
Yeah,
was obviously the Holy Land there, but they referred to it all as sham. They would say, this is sham, and obviously the capital being Damascus. So,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, like, well, just to
So with
summarize,
this, yeah,
these
so go for it.
these people fighting oppression, we have to be consistent with it. I
Yeah,
mean, there's this saying that we all know now. This past year, genocide in Gaza have exposed so many people for who
yeah,
they are. And that's why the
so
phrase
true.
comes from that Palestine is the litmus test to
Yeah,
distinguish those who are standing with what's right with those who are standing with what's wrong. Now, what Syria has done and what Syria is doing is filtering out those people standing with Palestine, filtering out the people that have selective solidarity, filtering out the people that
mm,
are hypocritical in saying that the Syrians should endure what the Israelis are doing to Gazans, if that makes sense. So the same thing that Israelis are
mm.
doing to the people of Gaza and people of Palestine, the Syrian regime, the Iranian regime occupying Syrian
Oh,
land,
that's it. Yeah,
Hezbollah occupying Syrian land, population transfers. When they besiege a city, they bring in coaches, they make the population go, they say you can leave after starving them for months, after bombing them, after raping their women, after slaughtering their children. They scare these people and make them weak, put them on coaches, send them away. And then what happens to that city? People from Iran turn up, people from Hezbollah turn up, and the Syrian regime is repopulating these cities with those who support the Syrian regime. And this is ethnic cleansing. This is what the Israelis are doing to Palestinians. Now,
yeah,
yes, let's say, for example, what's happened now with this uprising now in Syria. Let's say it does somehow serve Israel interests. Does that mean that the Syrian people are intending to serve Israel interests? Or does it mean that Israel have seen an opportunity, just like America see opportunities to divide and
of
conquer?
course. Yeah.
It's all part of history. When they
I
see
mean,
these opportunities, they take them.
everybody is an opportunist, and so people will always see that, and they would everybody will go for what they can get. There's no
Yeah,
denying
yeah.
that. I,
And to
I
answer
was
people's
yeah.
question about Israel, unless you want to continue on this topic.
Yeah, no, I was going to just add as a note that you see, watching some of the clips of what we're seeing now, and seeing is believing, ليس
Yeah,
الخبر كالمعاينة, as the Arabic proverb says, that, it's not when you talk about something, you see something, it's
mm,
whoa. Just seeing the sight of things like the Sadnaya prison,
yeah,
seeing what just the fact, honestly, I can't shake off those of you that haven't seen it. I don't really advise you to see it, but the electric human press
yeah,
that would just crush and flat to a sheet, like like a powerful electric human press, where after they hung they're showing all the ropes where they would hang people and then chuck them in this massive press and just crush them to kind of just for easy disposal. Seeing that, wallahi, is kind it's
You know what,
seeing
Mufti,
it as
since you
real
mentioned
is
this,
so tormenting
since you
that I
mentioned this, let me
felt,
tell you a story. Let me
yeah,
tell
that
you a
I
story.
felt anything that this witnessing that anything like that cannot be allowed to have carried on. So no matter what the price was, it is a price worth paying. Any potential chaos is a price worth paying to remove that what we can see, and I'm not even witnessing the actual torture happening. I'm just
Yeah.
seeing the machines and thinking, what the is going on here? So, yeah, but yeah, back
So
to what you were saying.
I've been working with Syrian refugees for a decade now, and that this means I sit down with families one to one. I'm not talking about going to a distribution and giving people food. No, we sit down with families and speak to them one to one. One of the families that I met some years ago, his name was Firas, this man, and he's a very big guy on crutches. We sat down
Yeah,
in his house. He told me that he was a general in the army in one of the cities in Syria, and he was
yeah,
in charge of the sort of military operation of controlling the city. So when the
okay,
protests broke out in his city, he received orders from his higher ups saying, take your troops and go shoot the protesters and kill anyone who's protesting on the street. Now, he
yeah,
put down the phone and he delayed the order to his soldiers. He didn't want to give the order to kill those people. He delayed it. Because he delayed it, the higher ups called the soldiers beneath him and they said, capture this guy. He's a traitor. We need to capture him. He knew something's happening. So he took his people with him, defected, and he left them. And he went and started fighting the same soldiers that he used to rule. Now,
yeah,
to cut a long story short, his story is very long, but to cut a long story short, eventually he handed himself in to save the people of the city because they were about to bomb a building full of civilians. He handed himself in. He told us about what he went through in prison. And allow me just to go into a few details. And again, there's a graphic warning here. Sexual violence is just a given. Like we don't even need to mention that that happens. That is a
okay,
given in any prison in Syria. Sexual violence is the first thing that they do. That's normal for us. Yeah. So they inject him with different sort of chemicals and different sort of food and things just to pump up his body and cause him weakness. They put him on this machine. They put you on this machine that pulls on your body till your spine breaks apart. It just pulls and pulls and pulls. Another machine that bends the back backwards like this. They broke him in different parts. They threw him in a container, a metal container, full of decomposing bodies for him to stay there and he can breathe the fumes and smell it. He said, I was sat in a puddle, like the entire container is a puddle of flesh and blood and water mixed together. And the soldier came in and he said to him, if you want to get if you want to get out of this cell, you need to crawl on your hands and knees like a dog and go bite a piece of meat from one of the bodies and bring it and drop it at my feet. And I said to him, what did you do? He said, if I stayed there another hour, I would have died from the fumes and the smell. So I had to do what he told me to do. They took
yeah,
him out of there. They battered him to a crisp. The torture he told me about was beyond imagination, to the point that he was lying down on his back. And when they took him, his wife was pregnant, just got pregnant. So he's lying on his back now, and they bring in a doctor to make sure that he's still alive so they can continue torturing him. And he said, I made a dua at that moment. I made a dua, Ya Allah, allow me to see my daughter or my son. He doesn't know at this point. Allow me to meet my newborn. He said, as soon as I made that dua, he felt a cold sort of, when you get goosebumps. He goes, my entire body started feeling like a cold thing rushing through it. And all the pain stopped there and then. He said, my eyes were open and I couldn't blink, but I could see them around me and I could hear them. So the soldiers were like, okay, this guy's dead. Throw him in a car and go throw him in the village where he's from. Send him to his family so that people can see what we did to him and they can stay at home and not rise against us. They put him in a taxi, in a car. They sent him to his village. People at the village coming out saying, like, trying to figure out who this person is. His father comes out. Okay, that's not my son. Carries on. Does not recognize him. His mother recognizes him. And subhanAllah, we managed to meet him and he was still alive. He's still suffering so much from all the injuries. And I was looking at his son that was born at the time. He was a bit older when we met him. And he said to me that this boy over here is the reason I'm alive. but it just captures a small glimpse
Yeah.
of
They
what
say
this
that,
regime was doing to people.
if you have a strong enough why, you can endure, anyhow. That's actually, and that comes from, this saying comes from the concentration camps actually, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, because it's the
Sorry,
same
Mufti,
thing
can I just
happening. Yeah,
need to grab my charger? My battery's dying. Sorry.
yeah, go for it, and oh yes, salam, Allah. Right, let me just bring this here. I was just checking. Right, okay. You can see here, people. Technology is just waiting for Osama to sit back. We're just sending his coordinates off to Bashar al-Assad, saying, "I'm giving Bashar a final opportunity to send me some crypto. Quick, I'll send you the
This is
coordinates
actually,
to Osama."
it's important to know also, like as Syrians living in the UK as well, we have to also remain silent and not speak out
Yeah,
about this because it will affect our family in Syria.
yeah,
So the fear aspect of it it
it's
wasn't limited to
crazy.
Syria. Any Syrians that are refugees around the world, we had to stay silent and not say anything about anything in case our family back home get harmed by what's
I
going on.
don't get. I said this to you before as well, that I don't get how. You see, because the Syrian people to the regime are still like, they themselves are Syrian people. Like, I don't get how a person, when you look, like, sometimes psychologically people dehumanize the other because they look different or they
Yeah,
appear different. So they say, like colonialism did and people continue to do
yeah,
through racism and stuff, say, well, oh, they're not even human, so we can torture them. These people look like you, they talk like you, they eat what you eat. How do you how do you get to a level where you can do the stuff that people are doing to somebody who looks, they just exactly, you are them? How does that? I don't get that, honestly. Wallahi, like, I don't understand it. Like,
look,
I can understand
we're thinking about it
psychologically when
from
xenophobia.
we're thinking about it
Mm,
from our mindset and our perspective as humans with mercy, love, and humanity. Now, just like a serial killer doesn't start by killing humans. They start by, killing animals, and then that it builds and it becomes desensitized over time. When you have somebody as evil as Hafid al-Assad and his people, they
mm.
evolve over time as well, and they get worse over time as well, just like serial killers. And they don't have that love for the people like you'd expect normal people to have. They were always making sure that they made their lives difficult. Why? What's their agenda? I don't know. Why do evil people
Like,
exist?
where does a person? I don't get it, yeah. Honestly, qasam se, wallahi, I don't see where that, how I understand, like Freud said, well, we are, he said that we're more, compassionate than we think, but yet far more monstrous than we can imagine.
Yeah.
But usually, psychology teaches us, I get it, it does teach us there is an in-group, out-group mentality that gets created. And things like the Stanford prison experiment demonstrated that. Dr. Zimbardo has books on it called the Lucifer effect. How when you create an outgroup, you justify to yourself, well, they are not us, so it doesn't matter. But I would just assume that the outgroup is more difficult when the people are exactly like you. They talk like you, they speak like you, they eat the same food, they probably listen to the same music, they watch the same things, they share the same humor. That how do you get to this level of uh, this level of tyranny? Like, let's say I'm sitting in a palace with countless food and my children are running around and I'm doing this and I'm cramming people into a dark underground cell and uh,
By the way,
just
this underground
suffocate.
cell, they
Yeah,
used to take all these prisoners and make them dig. They used to make do slave labor with all these prisoners. But look, the question of evil existing and people being evil and
Yeah.
all that stuff, it's existed for all of history.
Yeah,
And
I know.
it might be a God complex. It might be them just thinking
Mm,
that we give life and we give death, and they used to always, the people used to always, these people specifically, they used to
yeah.
swear at our God. They used to say Allah this and Allah that. They used to make people say La ilaha illa Bashar. There's just to torment the Muslims there.
I
So
have seen some clips where
I'd
they
love
make
to
the
say,
person, where they beat the person and say that,
and
Bashar is Allah and
children
so
as
you're
well.
Allah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a
I don't
video,
get.
famous video where a guy is buried up to his neck, and they're saying to him, "Say La ilaha illa Bashar," and then he says La ilaha illallah, and they keep saying to him, "Say La ilaha illa Bashar." He says La ilaha illallah, and then the soldier says, "Bury him," and then they bury him alive. So when we say it's a religious hatred, it's a sectarian thing. That you made it a sectarian thing. We're saying it for a reason because
I
they've always
think
been
it's
trying
like
to
a
oppress.
political religion almost. Like it's like the Stalin or Hitler. It's that kind of religion, which is not a
Yeah, yeah.
religion to do with religion, but
Mm.
it's a religion based on power and power. That
And
kind of. Yeah.
it isn't one answer also, Mufti. There's multiple
Yeah. True.
factors. There's multiple
Mm,
reasons why people do these things. And as
yeah.
humans, naturally, we want to ask why. We want to
I
ask why. We
can't
want to know
understand.
why.
Like I see this Qasam say this Said Naya thing has haunted me, even though I don't know what my bond is with it, but it haunted me watching things about it. I thought, damn,
Just
like
knowing
how do
people like that
people,
exist is haunting.
yeah, like how do people drop to such a level that they do this kind of stuff? Or do they just keep it out of sight? Like they make people do it like they're generals and say, I don't want to see it. I don't, like I don't, yeah, there must be,
It's possible. Just to stay
yeah, but
disconnected.
so the question now coming to, well, Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani and this new revolution that has freed, liberated Sham.
Hmm.
What obviously to me, and the question obviously of potential chaos, can this unwind into another down spiral into another Libya? Can it just become another Iraq? Will it just become despotic again? Will it become ISIS? Will it become, all these people are throwing all these things. Will Israel
Yeah.
just take it over now because it's so weak, like they've been bombing? But for a moment before, and I want to get your thoughts on this, I do feel after seeing this kind of stuff of this prison, and I'm sure there's countless others which haven't come in front of the camera yet, but I feel any potential chaos to rid the potential, I don't mean the actual chaos, but the potential of it may happen, like a gamble, is
Yeah.
worth taking to liberate. And this is seen in the hearts and the happiness of the Syrian people who, countless all over media, the happiness is seen. And, may Allah
I mean,
preserve it.
it's
I mean,
enough. It's enough to have one child born in prison out of rape, and there's countless of children who are born in prison out of rape. Freeing one child alone is enough to cause this revolution, let alone
yeah,
hundreds of thousands of people that are missing, let alone all the atrocities and crimes that are currently being uncovered that we have been telling the world about. We have been telling the world to listen and to look, but we've been ignored for all this time. For all this time, we've been ignored.
yeah.
We've been told that we're liars.
There's,
We've
I
been
was
told,
shocked
sorry,
to
Mufti,
see
just let
that.
me finish
Oh,
this
no,
point.
of course,
We've
yeah,
been
of
told
course,
we're
sorry.
liars. We've been told that we are sort of Western stooges, that we're serving Western interests. And when it comes to our liberation now, after us fighting alone all these years, people now want to have opinions. People now want to commentate about Syria. People now want to say that, oh, this is happening for this reason. They want to have opinions. They want to say that Syrians should do this, Syrians should do that. Absolutely not. Nobody deserves to have an opinion on Syria.
Yeah,
Nobody deserves to say anything because we stood alone all these years. We fought alone all these years, and nobody stood with us. Now, to answer your question about Jolani and Israel and the
yeah,
expansion project, let's think logically for a second. Let's think logically. Let's look
yeah,
at what Israel has been doing to Gaza and the West Bank. Gaza is a small piece of land on the coast of Palestine, and they've been fighting and resisting. Gaza has exposed Israel to the entire world.
Yeah.
Gaza is still resisting. They still can't take out the resistance. They still
Yeah.
can't control these lands. And this is an
Mm.
area that has been besieged for 17 years. Besieged. No food enters properly, water doesn't enter properly, they cut off electricity, they keep them sort of carpet bomb them every few years to keep them here hidden.
Yeah.
And Israel hasn't been able to control that area. Do they really
Mm.
think, do people, commentators, geopolitical experts suddenly, do they really think that the Syrian
Mm.
people who fought this tyranny that has lasted for almost 50 years and broke out of these shackles,
Yeah.
do they really think that they're going to sit aside and
Yeah.
watch Israel take over their land and they're just going to give their land to Israel? Yes, maybe Israel will take some land. Maybe Israel will. And they are.
Yeah.
They are. They're going to take advantage. But do you think Israel is going to be able to control Syria? That has borders with Iran, that has borders, sorry, with Iraq, and has borders with all these other countries and Turkey. It's not besieged. It's a country of 25 million people. Do they
Yeah.
really think that this greater Israel project will succeed? And that the Syrian
Yeah.
people are serving Israel? They're just going to be like, oh, yeah, Assad was a zalim, but you know what? Let Israel take over. No, we don't mind. It's fine. We're not going to do anything. Right now, the priority for Syrians is securing Syria. Yes, Israel
Yeah.
is bombing military bases and all these other things. They're
Yeah.
cowards. That's what they're going to do. They're
Yes.
criminals. What
Exactly.
do you expect
Mm.
from a criminal? What do you expect from a
Exactly.
nation that is built on occupation, built on
Yeah.
oppressing people and stealing land? Of course, we expect this
Yeah.
from Israel. We know it's going to happen. But the
Yeah.
priority right now is getting our house in order. The priority right now is controlling Damascus
Mhm.
and all these major cities and forming governance
Exactly.
and making sure that the people are safe and living their lives before we can turn around and look at what Israel is doing. People who
Yeah.
expect the
Mm.
Syrians right now saying that, oh, these rebels, they're fighting Assad. Why shouldn't they fight Israel? Well, you dimwits,
Yeah.
these rebels are 400 kilometers away from Palestine. Assad, that you've claimed is part of the axis of resistance, hasn't uttered a word to condemn the killing of the Hezbollah leader. He hasn't uttered a word to condemn the killing of Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. He hasn't uttered a word about the bombing of the consulate in Syria, in Damascus. He hasn't said anything. All these years, they haven't done anything to free the Palestinian people. They've given up the Golan Heights. 50
Yeah.
years, they haven't fired a single bullet, a single rocket towards Israel. And people are making out like these guys are the resistance. These guys are the liberators of Palestine. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I find it shocking that people have these thoughts and people have these discussions so disconnected
Yeah.
from reality on the ground.
Yeah, people don't realize how much the Assad regime has been subservient to Israel, how they
Absolutely.
gave the Golan Heights that you've got, how even I think part of is it Mount Hebron or Mount Heron, sorry, that they've
Mount Heron.
Mount Heron that they've given parts of, and that they've never, like you've said, that they've never been any kind of forget a threat. They've been very subservient to Israel,
Mhm.
regardless
Yeah.
of however being a Russian ally. So totally, and I understand.
There's even
Yeah,
reports that have come out like with these WikiLeaks documents where conversations between Israel and Bashar al-Assad and Bashar al-Assad and like the Qataris or the UAE or with Netanyahu, where he's talking badly about the Palestinian resistance, saying that these guys, they're a problem for me in my country. And he's saying
mm,
this to Israelis, he's saying this to the Americans that
yeah,
the resistance in Palestine, because they used to stay in Syria, the resistance in Palestine is a problem. They're a thorn
mm,
in the throat of Syrians. And then when the Syrian revolution started in 2011, the resistance of Palestinians, they condemned Assad and they left Syria and they went
yeah,
started
right,
staying in Qatar. And they
yeah,
were standing with the Palestinian people. So these commentators and these people talking about how, okay, Israel is bad and we should obviously fight oppression wherever we see it. But that also applies for oppression on us. It also applies for the killing of
Yeah.
us.
And I
Um,
think the question that people are asking about, well, why aren't these rebels trying to tackle Israel? Um, I mean, the question is, well, I mean, it's obvious because they're trying to stabilize and liberate Sham. I mean, they're trying to obviously get hold of, put their own house in order, trying to take control. They've got rid of. I mean, it's a miracle. People, I don't think people can believe that the Assad regime has actually disappeared. It was
yeah,
so in the heart and psyche and
I'm still in
consciousness,
shock.
yeah, of the Syrian people. They can't almost believe it. That I've been watching
Yeah,
interviews all over on social media from Syrian people, and they, many of them saying, I even though I'm believing it, but I can't believe it because I've been brought up with this whole thing.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. So
yeah, and I agree
the
with you that Israel would, any country, all countries are trying to take, they're seeing opportunities trying to take them. Israel's thinking, let's bomb. They're saying that we're trying to get rid of any kind of military bases and things like this, or whatever they're doing. Maybe they're going to seize a bit of land. Maybe they're going to try and steal resources. But
why
I hope we haven't lost our correspondent right there, Osama G. I take it let's hope he's not been taken. Let's hope Assad's regime hasn't got to him and has not taken him out. Let me just drop him a. Wait, did Assad get his coordinates and not even send me the crypto? Osama, I was worried that Assad had
can you hear
sent
me?
a. Yep, I can hear you. Sent a missile, and I may have accidentally sent your coordinates, but not received my payout, crypto payout from Assad. I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you not hear me? Just check your audio. Is
Hello, hello, hello.
Yep, I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you. You can't hear me? Okay, maybe disconnect the headphones and reconnect them. It might be that your speaker. In fact, go to settings. No, go to settings. One moment, people. Oh, you can't hear me, is it? Right, let me just one moment. Un momentico. Let me just tell if. Let me just tell. Oh, right. Osama G. Let me just tell him. To settings. Right, I'm just telling him because what it does. Yep. Okay, so. Right, okay, so people, wow, that Osama is back, I take it. Assalamu alaikum. Osama, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Right, okay, awesome. What I was just check your, if you can hear me, just check, go on to settings and click audio and just test where it's feeding out to. So where your mic is and where your, because I can hear feedback right now. So I think it's
Yeah, I'm just trying.
because you've left.
I'm
It's
trying to connect. I'm trying to
sure
connect
you
my
do that,
speakers.
and I'll give you a second or so. So people, that's yeah, it is crazy, and I do think, and I want to get Osama's thoughts on this as well. That look, I do think that right now the liberation of Sham for the people of Sham is a priority. So, and it's difficult, to focus on when there's a fire immediately in front of you. That becomes your first point of call, and so people have to deal with that. I think Osama is back. Osama,
Yeah, can
ahlan
you
wa
hear me
sahlan
now?
bik. Yep. Although the sound is slightly, I think, distorted, just check that your feedback from the audio settings is.
It's connected to my earphones now,
All
so
right, that's fine. I think it's
it
coming
should
back.
be
I think it's,
it
yeah,
should be
that's
okay,
fine.
inshallah.
Right, yep. So you were saying before Bashar al-Assad tried to take you out there, and not on Osama, not on my watch. Don't worry. I had to tell them behave yourself before we get to Moscow. So they allowed you to get your they restored your internet. They were like, okay, we won't mess. I was like, I was like, Assad.
Naughty.
I was like, you naughty, naughty. So, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, where were
Right.
we?
Yeah, so, and this whole thing of, look, Greater Israel, which is a ridiculous wish in the hearts of many stupid Israelis and Zionists. Realistically speaking, I don't think any thinking, calculating Zionist, or forget Zion, any calculating person thinks that the world of actual colonization can happen. Like you gave the example of, look, Gaza. Take Gaza as an example. It is a strip of land, right? It is not, on the big scale of things, it's a small piece of land. They have taken 1 year and ridiculously, abysmally failed in trying to take over Gaza. They can't even take over one strip of land. Now, what they do is they try to take over, clear a certain region, certain part. They do that. They move to another part, come back, and that part's taken back. They've got the resistance there again.
Yeah,
They're back to ground zero.
They don't have,
Yes,
they don't have soldiers on the ground.
They don't have people. They don't have numbers. What do you do? Like, yes, they can bomb. Yes, they can create rubble. Yes, they can decimate property and ruin the place, make it inhabitable. But they can't inhabit it themselves because they haven't even got the numbers. You see, you don't have
the ayah in the Quran, Mufti, about how they fight you from behind walls and fortified fortresses. What was the ayah in the Quran in Arabic?
That
من وراء حصن.
min wara'i, that's let me bring it up.
The Quran, when it talks about these people, it describes them in a way of a people who don't have that belief in their cause. They don't have that they know that they're wrong deep down. They know they're oppressing people deep down. So when it comes to fighting face to face, Allah puts a fear in their hearts.
لا يقاتلونكم جميعا إلا في قرى محصنة أو من وراء جدر. بأسهم. This is the thing, that they are just cowards.
قلوبهم شتى.
That their hearts are scattered, that they do not have that. This is it. Let me just come back there. This is in Surah Al-Hashr. And it is verse 14 that لا يقاتلونكم جميعا, they do not fight you together, إلا في قرى محصنة, except when they are in forts, fortified, or in these secure buildings, and أو من وراء جدر, or from behind walls they fight you from a safe distance. بأسهم بينهم شديد. Their own differences and enmity amongst them is very severe and strong. Yes. You may not see it, but it is there. وَقُلُوبُهُمْ تَحْسَبُهُمْ جَمِيعًا. You might think they are unified. Allah says, وَقُلُوبُهُمْ شَتَّى. Yet their hearts are dispersed and scattered.
How relevant is this?
لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. And that's fascinating, because Allah ends the verse by saying they are a people who don't have true insight and reason, even though they might be intelligent in the dunya. You see, you might think, oh, this person has a PhD, this person, he's not dumb. But Allah is saying true aql, true insight, they don't have here.
And then look, you got Iran and Hezbollah and Assad. They were seen as together. But look how they've abandoned him now. Hezbollah have released a statement saying, oh, we pray for the safety of Syria, and like they're trying to backtrack what they did to the Syrian people.
And I've heard that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, have also sent a message to Iran saying, look, with a commonality of Islam, Islamic principles and brotherhood, that we should have some form of cooperation. Because why not? We're not like Like insaniya should come first. Humanity. I mean, first of all, just being a human, and then the fact that there is Allah, the Quran between us as well, and regardless of differences, we should be even closer. So
Look, we
yeah,
know that Allah yumhilu wa la yuhmil, that Allah
yeah,
prolongs oppression, prolongs these things so that the world can see these people for who they are. So the world can see what these people have been doing. And when
and
we
in
witness
light
the
of that, there's a for our desi, there's a proverb that Allah ke haan der hai and der nahi. That when it comes to God's judgment, there might be there, which means like awaiting, but not under, not darkness.
Mhm,
So that
mhm.
it's exactly this, just in other terms, that Allahu yumhil wala yuhmil. That
So to go back to why I mentioned that, people are surprised at the speed of this liberation of Syria. And people need to understand that these people who've been defending this monster, they don't truly believe what they're doing is right. They don't they feel
Do
that guilt
people
and
do
paranoia.
people defend do people defend Assad?
Yeah, he had his soldiers, he had his army generals, he had
Oh, you
his
mean them? Oh, you
mukhabarat.
mean them? Sorry, I thought you
Yeah.
meant people online now defending him.
Oh no, if anyone defends him online now is an absolute idiot. But these people that have been fighting for Assad all their lives, or fighting their families have been fighting for them. The same thing applies to the Israeli soldiers, by the way. They have this guilt in their hearts and this fear of what's to come because they know I've been oppressing these people. And when you oppress a
Yeah,
people, you're scared of the retaliation.
of course,
You're
of
fearful.
course, of course.
So as soon as they saw a small organized group marching
Yeah.
towards Aleppo, they freed Aleppo like this because they ran away. They don't
But
want to fight
also,
these people.
wouldn't you say with that, just to couple that you see when the videos of the rebels, HTS, all of them, the amalgamation, their treatment of the soldiers they were capturing,
Yeah.
like it had such a massive impact that they were like giving them water. And they were obviously upset with what they had done. Like I saw some of the clips where they're saying, this is the guy who was torturing so many people. And obviously they weren't happy with him. He was tied up, but he says to him, look, give him some water, do this. And now you can imagine the army watching this and the people, like you're saying, that are in their hearts thinking, damn. But then they're thinking, actually, you know what? They seem to be humane. So,
Hmm.
let's not
Hmm.
fight, because they're showing rahmah, they're showing compassion, they're showing mercy. I feel that
There's
played a super role in all of
100%,
this.
100%. And there's something important for people to understand that these soldiers, we've seen a video recently, and there's a page on Instagram that has been translating videos from Syria. It's called
Yeah, what's it called?
translating underscore Syria. And it's translating videos coming out
Yeah,
of Syria directly into
maybe
English
somebody
language.
can maybe pin it in the comments. Somebody can,
Yeah.
but yeah,
So that people can understand directly from Syrians. And some of those videos you see, these soldiers of Assad being captured, and the people who are coming back to liberate their own lands and coming back to their mothers and coming back to their fathers, they don't have this blind hatred and vengeance. If they did have a blind
yeah,
hatred and vengeance, they'll kill anybody they see in sight. But they understand that these soldiers were forced into this service. They
yeah.
understand that. And they bring these asakir and these soldiers and say to them, look, victory came from Allah. اذهبوا فأنتم الطلقاء. Go, you are free. Go, you are free.
And those
But
who don't know, that's the saying of the Prophet, the hadith that he said
of
upon the conquest and the liberation of Mecca, when
Mecca, yeah.
they had certain people caught in were trapped within the haram, and they thought there was going to be a blood path. And the Prophet said, "Idhabu." He said, "I say to you what was said to quoting from Yusuf alayhi salam and so on." And he said that "La tathriba alaykum al-yawm." Today's not about blaming. That idhabu wa antum at-tulaqa. Go, you are free. You are free. So this term tulaqa, it's often a motif and a trope used. Often we hear it in Islamic things. So yep.
Yeah. So you have one layer, the layer of those general soldiers who were forced into this service, and out of fear, they had to serve this tyrant. Then you have the layer of the generals and the higher ups who were controlling these soldiers. Now,
Yeah.
the rebels and the revolutionaries in Syria, they've been in generally speaking, freeing a lot of these soldiers and letting them go. And a lot of these soldiers are coming back and joining the revolutionaries after this. But the generals and the people who documented their own crimes, like there's a person, I don't want to mention his name to not give him a plug, but go research. There's a person who used to capture prisoners, capture people who are demonstrating, used to torture them to death, and then feed their bodies to his lions. And he used to document this proudly, standing on burnt bodies and putting his feet on their skulls, proudly documenting this stuff. Now, people like this, they won't be forgiven because there's blood on their hands, first of all. And you have to understand.
No, and it's wrong. No, in Islam, in Islam, there is qisas. There is retribution. Islam is not pacifistic in that sense, because Allah mentions in the Quran that the people of the victim deserve justice. That otherwise this fire rage within can consume everything. That they must, like, people want justice, they need justice. So it's not always about, like, when people are sick like that, it's not to say, oh, that would be silly to say, well, oh, idhab and tatal. No, if a person's been ridiculously tormenting and murdering people like that, there must be justice.
Definitely, inshallah. And we are seeing glimmers of hope, and as we know in history, the liberation of Palestine has always come after the liberation of Syria, after the Fatah of Syria. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mufti, is that right?
Fatah Sham is actually, the liberation of Sham is amongst the kind of things that is spoken of when we speak of the Ashrat al-Sa'a, or the fitan at the end of time that we see of. Fatah Sham, the liberation of Sham, comes in many ahadith. In fact, it's a prominent feature that you see of one of the major signs.
And we have to be completely transparent and fair as well. I've seen some videos that I found very disappointing coming out of Syria, and it's mainly from groups that are not associated with the revolutionaries. You're going to get armed groups coming out. ISIS is sort of this glimmers of ISIS still in Syria, and they're committing these atrocities. They're killing people, they're stabbing people with their knives, and doing these barbaric things. They're ruining the image of the Syrians once again. And there's going to be this attempt to ruin the image of the Syrian people. But we've been through it all, and we have an experience with propaganda now. The past 14 years has taught us a lot. And if it's from the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do you think it's a coincidence? And I just thought of this now, actually. And I'm not one of those people that looks at numbers and stuff like that, but do you think it's a coincidence that the Prophet ﷺ had to endure hardship in Mecca for 13 years, and that the Syrians from 2011 to 2014 had to endure hardship for 13 years also, and that their liberation came after 13 years? And I'm just being a bit of like
no.
coincidence
that is
here, but
absolutely no. It's meaningful. It's not coincidental. It's meaningful.
Wasn't there a hikmah in the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba going through what they went through? Didn't they go to Medina then, and they became a people who had so much compassion because of what they went through? They don't want to inflict that on other people again. And that's what we're witnessing here in the Syrian people. After Fatah al-Sham and Fatah of these places, they go into, and they don't have hate in their heart because they've endured it themselves. And they don't want to put it on other people as well, if that makes sense.
Allahu Akbar. And may Allah allow that to manifest. And that for now, I would say unquestionably there is hope on the horizon. And regardless,
and there's a lot of hope coming from Palestine as well. The Gazans are celebrating. The people who are undergoing this genocide by Israel, they're celebrating for the Syrians.
Wow.
So how are the people who support Palestine or who are against Israel trying to sort of dampen the mood and show the Syrians in a negative way? And it seems very ironic to me, and it doesn't make any sense.
I think that's just dumb and silly. Anybody trying to, I understand that the worry and the concern of this, not wanting this to become a kind of civil war, not wanting this to become a Libya or become an Iraq, not
Who's
wanting
more
that. I
concerned?
understand.
Who's more
Exactly. Who would be
concerned?
more concerned
Us.
than the actual Syrian people? Exactly.
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 That's so true.
And if
Allahu Akbar. But for now, I see right now, I'm sure everybody admits to the potential, that there's always potential, and potential can carry a potential for chaos as well. But right
of
now,
course,
there is clearly hope on the horizon. And the things that we are hearing from Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, they seem to be all on point. They seems to be all about, that we're against discrimination. We're about unity. We're not about kind of trying to put one religion even or sect above people. In fact,
yeah.
he nominated the Christian priest in charge of
To be a governor
what
in
post?
Aleppo.
Yeah, governor of Aleppo,
Of Aleppo,
and to
yeah.
show that, look, this is a unified. We want to come together as a whole, as a collective. He's saying all the
Even
right words.
The Shia
Yeah,
in Damascus, he's
yeah.
allowing them
He's
to go
saying.
pray and practice their religion and do whatever they
And I
want.
saw the
And
clip from what is it? Say the Zainab,
yeah,
the area in Damascus that was saying that, whoa, we had concerns, but no, look, everything is fine. There's none of that retaliation. There's nothing like this. We are free to practice. I saw some of those videos, and I
and the
think
latest
everything we're
developments.
seeing. Yeah,
Sorry, Tola.
no, go, because I was just saying
The
everything we're seeing so far is absolutely. It's nothing but hopeful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The latest developments that I have been catching up on, because just remember, I'm on a deployment with 20 volunteers that I'm managing in Jordan right now, and I don't get time to just follow all the stuff that's been
Yeah.
happening. And I'm actually going to start my shift in what's the time right now here?
Oh, damn. You know what?
Oh,
We'll
I'm
wrap
gonna have
this
to be
up
open about
actually.
6 hours. But
Damn, yeah, we'll
the
wrap this up.
sorry, my point that I was going to make. Right now, the latest developments, the Syrian rebels and the revolutionaries that have liberated the majority of Syria right now, they're turning their eyes onto the US-backed forces, the Kurds, that have taken a
Mm,
big chunk of Syria also. And this also goes to prove that these revolutionaries, they're not supported or backed by the US, like people are saying. They don't serve US and Israeli interests. The areas that the
mm.
US is sort of funding these Kurds, these areas have a lot of oil reserves and gas reserves that the Americans are benefiting from and stealing from Syria. So now our duty is to also just try our best to stabilize the region,
The
stabilize the
region,
country
yeah.
as a whole. And then we can turn
Yeah.
our attention to all these other threats on our borders. But people who are expecting something right now have no wisdom. They have no insight into what is going on. They have no understanding of the context of what's going on. All they know is that Israel is bad, and anything that is against
Yeah.
Israel is good. And they have this black and white view that is very distorted. They don't understand the actual
Mm.
context of what's going on.
Local kind of politics. And by the way, just for the deleting my anti-Israel comments is super wild. Nobody, just for the record, nobody's deleting anything. We're sitting here having this conversation. There are general filters on YouTube, so certain comments may not show. But yeah, make no mistake that everybody is unified in their resistance to Israel and in the condemnation of Israel as a terrorist and tyrannic state. Nobody is in disagreement with that. But the rest of the regional politics, they are unfortunately nuanced and colored, and just because somebody, they're not unified in that way. So everybody's got a stake in the region. Turkey's got its own, has got its own, Saudi, but especially the ones nearby, they all have their own. Yeah, but inshallah, for now, and definitely always, as a Muslim, we should always be optimistic, always be positive. Um,
Mufti, just on a final note, I just had a thought. Like, why do you think people in the West are they so easily encourage other people to put their lives on the line? And they want other people to put their lives on the line to fight oppression, while they enjoy privileges living in a colonial country that has colonized half of the world like the US or like Britain or any of these Western countries. They're living in their comfort, in their privilege, and they just want to push people towards fighting and to doing this and doing that.
Yeah.
Why do they, I mean, not saying we will fight
Yeah.
oppression as Syrians. All our lives we will fight oppression. But we're not going to listen to somebody living in the West to tell us how to do it, to tell us when to do it, to tell us why to do it. We will do it because we believe it's right. But we're also aware of these people
Yeah.
who are so eager for us to push. Of course, they have good intentions, but
Yeah.
you're
But
living in the comfort of the West. Like, sit down
what
for a
it
bit.
is, Osama, is don't you think, like in Arabic, the proverb that رضا الناس غاية لا تنال, that, if
Yeah,
and by nas I mean all of people, that having everybody happy with you is an unachievable goal. And there's
absolutely.
the funny story of Juha. Actually, a story. See, this story I learnt in Syria. You see, so from the comic book of Juha, and so
Soon as you
Juha in
said Juha, I remembered.
yeah, so he's this comical trope, this figure. So he's going in this story, him and his son, and they have this donkey, and he's sitting on the donkey, and the son is going along, and some people say, look at that tyrant of a father riding the donkey, and his son, Bechara, the kid, is walking. So he says, you know what, let's swap places. So they swap places. And then they walk past some people and say, "Look at that! What an ark! What a son! What an grateful son that he's riding the donkey whilst his dad, the old man, is walking." So they say, "You know what? Let's both sit on the donkey." So they go past another group of people and they go, "Look at these bloody jahils, right? Barbarians! Poor donkey, overloading it with their weight." Two people on a donkey. So then they say, let's get off the donkey, and they're walking in the donkey, and they walk past them. You go, look at these idiots walking, and they've got a donkey.
They're not using it.
So that is the kind of moral and the gist of, well, you can never make people, all people as a collective will never always, they'll never, you can't please everybody.
I mean, we're
But
not trying
Khalid,
to. Not trying to. And we
yeah, and
shouldn't try to. Nobody should try to.
and I think just having positive spirits, having husna dhan billah, and also with people, his creation, and just trying to wish the best, inshallah, out of this, make dua for people. I have to say, with age, Osama, yar, and as you're still the young'uns in our kind of circles. We're old now, yar, getting old. I feel, wallahi, it's interesting, as with age, I don't know whether it's age or just the time as it's been with me, I find that when I come across oppression now and seeing it, the way it hurts me, it didn't used to in this way. Like you'd always think things are wrong, but it has a different, and I see around in the world in different things, and I think to myself, how do people do, and the same thing I think of Pakistan, and I see what's going on there. I hope the army is, there's some liberation from the army in Pakistan. There was these protests with Imran Khan, and they had these kind of containers, and there's this iconic clip. I mean, there was like a massacre that took place. They kind of opened fire, hundreds of people got killed, but there was this iconic clip, unfortunately, where this person is praying on this container.
Yeah.
And they came, and the soldiers, and these are Muslims, and they're not here sectarian. They're all Muslims. They're all of that country. They threw him off. It's several containers high. They just threw him off and he died. And wallahi, it hurt me, like just watching it. I thought, wow, like I don't know where people have got to. I mean, what was, the guy was just praying, and you think they're not, you're not kafir fighting Muslim, you're not sectarian, you're just politics. And even if you want to take the guy off, you just let him finish, and even if you broke his salah, which would have been unacceptable, but you just okay, tell the guy to get off and let him finish. He was finishing, he was in his tashahhud. The guy said, they just threw him off and he just died. And I thought, wow. And these things, they hit me in, yeah.
When we read in the Quran about the description of Jahannam and how Allah will torture people for eternity and replace their skin and do this. And we think, whoa, that is so harsh. It's so harsh. And then you grow up and you see all this oppression and you see all this evil that people are committing. And you think that, alhamdulillah for Jahannam. Alhamdulillah, Jahannam exists. Because these people need to be punished. And وَيَشْفِي صُدُورَ قَوْمٍ مُؤْمِنِينَ. That when we see this oppression and when we see all this killing and all this torture and rape, we have this thing in our hearts, that broken heart, seeing all this oppression. And the only thing that will heal our hearts is these people being punished, and these people being thrown into the hellfire for what they did. And wallahi, I'm gonna say this for the rest of my life. Alhamdulillah for hellfire, because there's certain people that deserve to be there. Definitely deserve to be there.
I also feel that can't we just give these people some, I don't know, some magic mushrooms and they can feel some love for once, man? Like, I just feel to myself that can't they just even, like, I don't even, like, I understand that there needs to be justice, but I just feel like, can't these people feel some love for once and just change, man? Like, come on, yaar. What is...
These guys, they'll probably lose their minds if they had magic mushrooms, because
can't we just give them some ayahuasca and they just feel that, you know what have I been doing, man? Like, I need to... Like, is this me? Like, stuff. Like, I need to. God, like, where is love? God, we did this whole thing. Somebody's going to say, look, and they managed to get that topic in there as well. So, Allahu Akbar. Honestly, sometimes I feel that that's what ought to happen. You ought to get these tyrants in together and give them all ayahuasca, let them face their inner demons, and then let them understand the world of love that they've been missing. And maybe a bit of MDMA in that case, then I don't know. This is not...
I thought we're the global ones.
Yeah. Allahu Akbar. Right, guys, with that, I'm going to have to wrap this up. It's been absolutely amazing, honestly, having this conversation, and I thank you. I wanted to have this last week, but I think maybe, we plan, and Allah, the divine algorithm is always better, because we waited and the whole liberation of Sham has occurred. And those who don't know, by the way, Osama's, we can call him by his kunya, Abu Sham. You see, because his daughter.
I named my daughter. Yeah, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. I named my daughter Sham for that reason, because when she was born, I'm not gonna lie, I had no hope of ever going back to Syria or for my children to ever see Syria. But I thought, you know what, if I call her Sham, she'll have that little connection with her ancestral homeland. And recently, I just grabbed Sham and I hugged her and I said to her, "Sam, are you ready to go to Sham?" And she was like, "Who's that?" And I thought, I got emotional. I thought, she doesn't know what Sham is, and I can't wait to take her, inshallah, and show her her ancestral homeland and things like that. But we remain hopeful as Syrians. We always remain hopeful, inshallah. But I do want to ask everybody to make dua, because things are still uncertain and we don't know what's going to happen. We leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we hope for the best, and we stand.
Somebody said Mount on Joe Rogan. Right. That's the ayahuasca thing that they're picking up on. Yeah. No, Ameen. We make dua. Allah save. Ameen. Min kulli sharri sharir. May Allah protect. And everywhere, wherever there is tyranny, my first dua is, may Allah replace the darkness in their hearts with light. May they see, sometimes, like, I would want people that have that darkness to see the light, to feel that would be truly something.
Usually those people with darkness in their heart, when they truly see light, they become the best of people. And we know this. We know this because of how the Sahaba, alayhi ridwanullah, the Umar ibn al-Khattab, he went to kill the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he became Muslim, and he became one of the best Muslims to ever exist. So,
and it's so true.
We have to have compassion and mercy regardless, because it is a deen of mercy at the end of the day. And we have to follow the example of Prophet.
Ameen, ameen. Shukran once again, Osama, for taking the time out and really sharing this with us. It's a very emotional discussion for you, but I think you're the best person to really speak to about it. So, shukran once again, and to our viewers. Osama, if somebody wants to reach out to you, is there anything that you'd like to plug?
So I'm mostly active on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Osama Wloo, so OSAMA.WLOO. Don't ask me why I have that name, but that's my Instagram handle, inshallah. And if people want to follow my work,
I'll share that in the description as well.
if people want to follow the humanitarian work that I've been doing for 10 years and want to actually see the truth directly from the people here in the refugee camps. And by the way, some good news. We went to do a distribution yesterday, and we found out that the refugees had actually packed up and started going back to Syria. So we had to re-divert the distribution to somewhere else. So yeah, inshallah, things go back to normal and people can absolutely live their lives again with love and peace and unity. And follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, so follow. I was about to say, don't just request it. People follow him. You see, this is why you let a tyrant rule over you. You need to be despotic. People, make sure you follow his work, okay? That's what I'm saying. Right, so that's honestly shukran. And all the viewers as well, Allah bless you all. If you want to reach out to me, as always, Instagram is there for quick Q&A. For those of you that want one-to-one consultations and sessions, you've got it right there on the screen in the bottom corner, patreon.com/Malm. Head over there, you can subscribe. We do have one-to-one tiers. We have other tiers which allow you to generally be part of my Discord group, where we do have group sessions as well, at least usually about twice a month. Right, Allah bless you all. Take very good care of yourselves. Salaam Allahi alaikum as always. Wa khuda hafiz, folks.
Assalamu alaikum.